we have this after World War II as well, where a lot of these guys come back not okay.
I think we still have it.
And we still have it today.
Turns out this is still a problem.
Still a problem today, right?
That could also just be the name of our podcast.
Still a problem. With Alana and Dan. Let's do a spin-off.
Okay.
Do an advice show. You just said you got energy. You're raring to go.
I'm raring to go today.
On this morning's episode.
That's never happened before.
It hasn't. Are you okay?
Unclear.
Remember when Trump got COVID and then he got the medicine and then he was bi for a week?
No, you know what it is?
You remember that? He was like, I love all these handsome men.
By the way, he's still bi. Is it him with Zoran?
Yeah, that was,
he's in love.
This is what today's episode is about. Donald Trump, the president, being bisexual. Go on, you were saying?
So, I am on steroids for my cough.
That's also why you picked up a car in the parking lot.
I'm a little juiced up.
Well, that's perfect for today's episode because we've done all this work setting the table of prohibition.
Mm-hmm. And what a beautiful table you have set.
The tablecloth is of a fine lace, a chamois. The crystal glassware is out. Mm-hmm. And now it's time to pour alcohol in all the bowls. We're flipping the table over. So prohibition is now in effect. And Al Capone, our hero, sort of. Anti-hero. Man of the people.
It's hard to know with these stories.
I mean, this is what this podcast does. It really makes you think, is he a hero? No. But Al Capone is raring to go. 21st birthday prohibition comes into effect. It's time to go to the races with John Torrio, his boss, criminal mastermind, and start bootlegging and making millions upon millions and millions of dollars. I've heard estimates as high as $60 million at the height of the Capone mob on bootlegging.
That's insane, especially back then.
20s money. I mean, we're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars. The Torrio Capone mob control the former Levy district on the south side of Chicago, the main red light district of Chicago. They control entire towns and far-ranging suburbs around Chicago. Stickney, Calumet, Chicago Heights, Burnham.
The way you say that with the accent.
Calumet Fisheries. Go get a fish sandwich,
Dan, question for you.
Yeah.
What could go wrong?
That's a great question because this was a time where a young man could be a homeowner. Now, this is not science fiction. This used to be.
A young man.
Not
a boomer.
With a growing family, buys a home on Prairie Avenue in, I believe, Grand Crossing. So that's the good part of what's going on. Mm-hmm. The bad part of what's going on is May Capone, Al's wife, despite being in hearth and home, her hair is going white with stress. And why, you ask?
I should say, since I'm starting to go gray now, I should just be like, it's from the stress that my husband is putting me under.
From the stress of Rafi running a criminal empire.
Yeah, it's very stressful. It's not because I'm of age.
Is he a hero? Is he not a hero? I don't know, right? But May Capone's hair is going white. She's a little younger than us. I won't say how old. She's getting a little stressed out by the fact that Al Capone and John Torrio, contrary to popular opinion, popular conception, were not the only gangsters in Chicago at that time. And even at the height of Al Capone's success, he did not control Chicago outright.
That is very interesting to me because you think of someone who's so emblematic of the mob and sort of all powerful, but he didn't even control Chicago?
No, never. And, look, he was obviously the most powerful throughout Prohibition, the Torrio Capone mob. They were the biggest. They were the best. They became the basis for the Chicago outfit, the main mafia in Chicago. But they did not control all of Chicago at any point during Prohibition. There was a gradual weakening of their enemies, but never an outright dismantling of them. And I think that is very interesting, and it plays a not inconsiderable part in his eventual downfall.
So we're going to hear about that today.
We are going to hear about Al Capone's enemies. Every scumbag in Chicago said, it's time to be rich, too.
And we're going to go through.
We're going to grab the brass ring, not this Al Capone guy. And we're going to talk most about his most wily, nasty, tenacious adversaries, the North Side mob.
Great names on this episode.
This-
Okay? Get ready.
Listen, if you do one thing this year, listen to this episode and tell us what your favorite name is. Mine is Hot Stove Jimmy Quinn. We'll get to that later. Put that in your
Hot
back pocket.
stove. I don't even want to know.
Because he'd steal the hot stove from a house. That's how much he steals.
That's incredible. I thought it was going to be far more violent, so I'm happy with
Probably
that.
you could kill a guy with a stove too. We'll get to that all in today's episode. So, Avatar's in the news.
Okay, where are you going with this?
You're gonna wonder, how is he gonna thread this needle? I'm gonna do it. Big Jim Cameron, another James Cameron joint, director of Titanic. Big Jim. He also directed a movie called Titanic.
Never heard of that.
Was 1912 is when the Titanic sank, and that's sort of when we're going back to here. But now I can turn it around and say mass media, movies. How about newspapers? Okay, not one of my strongest introductions.
I'm confused.
Let's start over and say we're going back to the 1910s.
Okay.
Contrary to popular opinion, a lot of people think America was not based on crime. But
do they think that?
A surprising number of Americans seem to think that.
How could you think that?
This is a great question. I don't know. I mean,
sort of our thing.
It's our thing, right?
Along with suing people.
And when suing people doesn't work, you got to do what the newspaper barons back in Chicago in the 1910s did, which is you need to fucking hire a guy to throw a brick at someone. Okay.
Incredible. And I love this. Are we going to talk about Annenberg?
Well, that's it. Moses Annenberg, the Annenberg family is a media dynasty now. They have their name on the School of Journalism and the Annenberg Center of Communications and all this shit. They started out the most mobbed up.
I feel like no one
family.
knows that.
It's amazing. They made their fortune off the racing wires, which fed the mob gambling industry. But before that, they controlled the racing forums, the racing printing. And Moses Annenberg, the paterfamilias of this family, is trying to take over the newspaper racket in Chicago with his Chicago Examiner tabloid. Okay. Now, he's trying to upstage the Meadow McCormack dynasty. These are the guys responsible for the McCormick Reaper. These guys are rich, old money at this point, right? They control the Chicago Tribune, the main paper in Chicago, still in operation today, right?
Hanging on by a thread, I'm sure.
Trunk got their hooks in it. We won't talk about Trunk. We can't talk about Trunk. It's just fun to say Trunk.
It is fun.
But back then, it was controlled by these vampires, the Medill McCormick family, in their vampire lair on Michigan Avenue. Seriously, go look up the Tribune building. But the result is both sides just start employing thugs to beat up the other one.
Okay.
I would love to see newspapers bring this back, incidentally.
Maybe we wouldn't be such a dying industry.
It's so true. Maybe get some life in it. If David Brooks got punched in the fucking face every once in a while.
Incredible.
They might delete that too. But I'm saying.
I like it.
I like it, right? So these guys, what they're doing, they're hiring thugs to go throw out the other side's newspapers.
Which, by the way, call back to a previous episode. Remember how Al Capone got his start? Throwing away the shoe shine of the competitors.
This is it, right?
It's a classic.
And the same young men who are doing this are going to stick around in Chicago, right? They're beating up newspaper vendors. They're pressuring newspaper vendors. You sell this paper, not that paper.
And does it work?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And what these young thugs are doing, being paid by these wealthier men who are going to go on to be very respectable, is learning a very important lesson of how to intimidate and pressure people on behalf of semi-legitimate businesses, right? And one of the main gangs doing this on the north and west sides of Chicago comes to be known as the Market Street Gang. They get politically connected doing this, right? They earn a lot of practical experience, all of which is going to come into use during Prohibition.
And let's be clear, these are not mob-connected gangs. This is an outside gang.
These are young thugs in gangs. Like you said, they're not very professionalized yet, but Prohibition, as it is for Al Capone, is going to be a boon to them. And the Market Street Gang is going to someday become the North Side Mob, Al Capone's biggest adversary, right? But before we get to that, we have to talk about how Al Capone is setting himself up, right? So I mentioned He's never in complete control of gangland because there's these other gangs like this, which have a lot of practical experience pushing around people.
What would you say is the main difference, though, between an outside gang and then the mob? Is it just the professionalism with which they work? Or
I think that's an important point. Take John Torrio, who's still the boss at this point, the criminal mastermind, right? He originates out of gangs, the 5 Points gang back in New York, right? Gangs tend to be younger men. The term, there's not a hard and fast difference between the term gang and mafia or syndicate or whatever. But the best way I can understand it is there's a level of professionalism and established skill and usually age too. Gangs tend to be
interesting.
Younger men, thugs, right? Most of the guys drawn to prohibition bootlegging start out that way, where they're thieves, they're petty criminals. But
and I feel now it's also racial. I don't know if it was then, but I mean, I'm assuming a lot of these outside gangs aren't.
Well, and we're going to see how
Italian.
that happens today. I mean, this is absolutely a great point that particularly Irish gangs start to lose the gang title as they get more accepted, right? And they're just youth groups and things like that, right? Yeah, right. But this is what Al Capone and John Torrio have to contend with, right? So they're building hard power. They got all these hitmen, right? They've got all these bombers. They've got all this corrupted law enforcement, right? That's the hard power. That's when push comes to shove, Al Capone's going to go in a saloon and blow Joe Howard away, like we talked about last episode, right? But they also have soft power, and that's where Mike Merlo, the first image, comes into play here.
Okay.
Now, the Italian-American community in Chicago at this time, it's very large, and they are, the leading lights of it are realizing we have to build our own institutions to compete with the Irish, the Germans, all these guys who were here before us. Enter Mike Merlo, that's his passport photo there, and the Unione Siciliana.
Ooh.
Put a little mustard on that, you know. Put a little red pepper.
Put a little red sauce.
Pepper flakes
Not
on
mustard, red sauce.
I know, you know, I guess that'd be German, you know. But yeah, Mike Merlo, Michele Merlo. I like saying Michele
me too.
more. Right? Now, this guy isn't much to look at. How would you describe him?
Honestly, we're looking at such an old newspaper
the one we can
clipping
actually see
that
him
it's
in.
very hard to make out their faces. But, you know, little round, bespectacled, balding man.
Yes. I think he's both bespectacled and respectable.
Did I say?
So it's be respectable.
It's confusing.
Here's a 1915 dinner of the Unione Siciliana. This is an Italian-American fraternal organization. It helps Italian immigrants get jobs, get housing and all that. Over time, it also becomes a way to corral votes, right? Same way the Irish dynasties have been doing it in Chicago for a long time. And that gives them political power, right? Over time, it gets corrupted by the outfit, by the mob, because look who's sitting next to Mike Merlo. Big Jim Colosimo, who's worm food at this point. And there's John Torrio. The other gentleman in here, we have Joe D'Andrea, who's a major political figure, and then cop after cop after cop. Right down to Chicken Harry Cullett.
That's my favorite. And you don't need to remember all these names. They're just for the color.
We're going to have a lot of names today, and it's just because it's a spicy episode.
So I read this as, whoa, Chicken Harry Cutlet.
Not once have I read his name and not read it as Chicken Harry Cutlet.
But that's a really good one. And do you know why that's his nickname?
Shaking down chicken vendors. Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's one story I've heard.
Okay.
There's others. But look at this. Ed Murphy, John Howe, these are big Irishmen, and they're being brought into the system here by guys like Mike Merlo. Because Mike Merlo is a very skilled underworld diplomat. He's moving through the real, legitimate world and the underworld, right? When he dies, they have this insane wax effigy of him. This amazing funeral for him. Remember this wax statue that's built of him.
Well, explain to me how powerful he is compared to a Torrio.
Great question. John Torrio is a gangster, and everyone knows it, right? Mike Merlo is not. So Mike Merlo is the intermediary who can go into the real world, and it's not a scandal if he does.
Got it. Okay.
And he can come back and hang out with John Torrio and do this, right? And this is all part of John Torrio's brilliant plan, which is brilliant. The superior business model, this is the thing that sets him apart from everyone. He's got the best business model. He says to these other gangsters, why fight? We team up together. We pool our resources as few of us as possible. We can make more money than God off prohibition. We can all share in corrupting officials, right? We don't have to
How
bribe.
sweet. It's just such a sweet kumbaya moment.
It's John Lennon's dream,
Exactly.
This is what we could have here on Earth,
Exactly.
And we could all share it. There's enough wealth to go around for everyone. There's enough territory in Chicago. Why fight amongst ourselves? And the problem is the guys that you're convincing, as I just mentioned, are all knuckle-dragging thugs.
Yeah, sounds good for about 5 minutes.
If you're smart like John Torrio, it does.
Yeah.
But these guys, we got to get into the criminal landscape at this time.
Can't wait.
And the absolute mutants that are drawn to it. So,
who are we working with?
Here's my guys. Okay. Let me just tell you right now, this is my favorite shit in the whole thing.
Yeah.
I love.
You wish you were one of these. You were just hanging out. Admit it, Dan.
Smoking a little cigar, wearing a straw hat, straw boater hats, not having a shirt that fits. It's like these are the things that made men back then,
They don't make them like that anymore.
They sort of do, actually. And unfortunately, they control the government.
Yeah.
But let's take a look at Chicago gangland at this time. Now, this beautiful, absolutely stunning map from the Tribune in the middle here. If you can't see it, it nicely divides up Chicago between all these different gangs. And you see what I'm talking about in terms of how fractured it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of them.
You think it's just Capone or whatever. I think this was made in 1930, this map, right? And obviously Capone has a broad swath. It makes clear some of the gangs are pro-Capone, some of them are anti.
Oh, interesting. Well, right. I mean, he has a half.
That's right. Exactly.
It's not that much more, if at all.
That's right. So this is, again, this is a thing that I don't think is well understood. And we have to talk about how much competition there was for the bootlegging trade in a city as hard-drinking as Chicago. And the kind of men drawn to this, right? So first off, who gets into the bootlegging trade? A lot of petty criminals, thieves with experience in thuggery, like we're going to talk about with the North Side Mob. That's one. Another, and this is overlooked, World War I veterans. World War I is so horrifically violent that there are a lot of men who return from it very skilled with violence and very eager to keep using those skills to make money, right? And we have this after World War II as well, where a lot of these guys come back not okay.
I think we still have it.
And we still have it today.
Turns out this is still a problem.
Still a problem today, right?
That could also just be the name of our podcast.
Still a problem with Alana and Dan. Let's do a spinoff.
Okay.
Do an advice show. So a lot of World War I veterans, and we're gonna talk about one of them in the North Side Gang, but also a guy named Claude Maddox who runs the Circus Gang. A lot of these guys, right? They are not typically immigrants. They're typically the sons and grandsons of immigrants. Mm-hmm. And this is important because even at that time, again, not that it's still a problem today, immigrants were typically blamed for crime way out of proportion to their numbers. It's more sons and grandsons, first and second generation, right? Guys like Matthias Kolb, son, grandson of German, Italian, Irish immigrants, they're bootlegging, right? Saloon operators, that's not a shock, right? Surprising number of cop killers, which I point to say, these are very violent men. If you kill a cop, right? Like that's like, usually they nail you for that, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're so angry. And these guys get away with it constantly. Ex-cops, another the counter to that, right?
Yeah.
Cop killers and ex-cops, right? A lot of those. And then to your question about gangs, quote unquote athletic clubs, like the Reagan's Colts. Reagan's Colts is an Irish-American gang in all but name, posing as an athletic club. They're very politically connected, and they're Irish, right?
So it's sort of, the Italian mob has their social clubs, which were, you walk in the front, people are playing cards. It's an Italian social club. In the back, they're doing crime.
That's right. And
that kind of situation.
And there's an interesting racial element to them too, like you said, right? Which is they are very politically connected. Their base is Bridgeport on the south side of Chicago, future home of the Daily Machine. And their big thing, in addition to crime, in addition to bootlegging, is anti-black racism. So this headline here is one of several of the hate crimes that they committed, killing black Chicagoans. This is a thing with them, right? They were instrumental in a 1919 race riot in Chicago. So this is the kind of people we're dealing with here.
And can you say the same thing for Torrio and Al Capone?
Interestingly, Capone, relatively tolerant on this question, enjoyed jazz music a great deal, patronized black-owned businesses, was friendly to black musicians. So relatively tolerant, surprisingly.
Yeah, especially compared to the other side.
To these guys. And it should also add, Southside Chicago, in this time, is undergoing the Great Migration. Many, many black Southerners are moving north, and they are in his territory. And he is certainly selling to them as well. Black bootlegging is less talked about. It tended to take place more in the home and in certain segregated joints, right? There's the occasional black and tan club, as they call it. But this, again, just speaks to the incredible diversity here, right?
Which seems like that's part of why it's so fractured. I mean, there's just so many different types of people in Chicago at this time. I mean, it's kind of impressive that Capone gets such a stranglehold given that fact, right?
Well, that's right. And I mean, and so that's the other issue, right? Location, right? So now let's break it down. That's just the characteristics of the bootleggers. But then we have locations, right? We have northwest suburbs. Roger Toohey, an Irish-American gangster, controls that. He has probably the best liquor in all of Chicago. He's bussing it in or shipping it in by train from Boston.
So better than Capone's.
Yeah, better than Capone's, and sold for cheaper. So he's a big rival, and he controls the suburbs, very tight with the suburban police forces and mayors and stuff. On the lower left-hand corner, this intimidating character, he's
what's going on with his teeth there?
He's snarling at you, is what he's doing.
Very scary.
And that is Polak Joe Saltis, attributed 25 murders to him or so. Used to enjoy test-firing Winchester rifles. He controls a important section of the southwest area of Chicago. This is the saloon district, the beer drinking district. 300 saloons in that district. He's the beer baron of Chicago. And his guys that he sells to, being a Hungarian who emigrated at the age of 12, are, and this is a slur, the bohunks of Chicago. The Eastern Europeans, Southern Europeans, Czechs, Bohemians, Poles, that's who he is selling to, right? But then you have, another quality amongst a lot of these guys, siblings. You have the Jenna brothers. This is a list of 3 of them getting blown away. We're going to talk about why that happens later. Well, there's 6 of them.
Oh, okay. Only half.
So more of them
half the blood.
Yeah, more of them get killed later. But the terrible Jennas control Little Italy. They are sort of the scummiest way of making money off this. Bathtub gin, right? Wine made in people's attics and basements.
We don't know what's in there, kind of a situation.
I wouldn't
You might
drink
die
it.
if you drink it.
I wouldn't drink it. Yeah, they're paying.
I'm not saying a lot.
I mean, I'm a garbage can, but look, $18 a day to brew rot gut for them. That's one option,
Can
right?
you imagine, though, just looking at this map, just kind of getting a chance to go back in time and just kind of troll around this era of Chicago?
So you're asking, do I imagine it? How about, do I imagine it every single day?
Yep. I see it.
That's what I do.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Tell us what you're doing.
I'm wishing I was Spike O'Donnell right now. I mean, because that's the last quality, which is charisma, right? You can't see Spike O'Donnell. He's dressed to the nines, has a cigar in his mouth.
Very Frank Sinatra coded.
I mean, and here's the other crazy thing. He's not even the only O'Donnell gang. He's the South Side O'Donnells. There's a West Side O'Donnells. They're not even related.
No, well, they might be if you went all the way
all the way back to the old country. That's a lot. So this is what Al Capone and John Torrio have to deal with. And this isn't even the most lucrative area that we're talking about here. The most lucrative area is the last in Chicago to be developed. And it's that one up there that says Dean O'Banion, Bugs Moran gang. That is the north side.
Now, why is that the most? Can you talk a little bit about the geography of Chicago? So we know that, Al Capone and Torrio have the south side.
Yeah.
Why is this top right here?
The north side.
Northeast, I guess. Why is that the most powerful?
So here's the deal. The north side is the last area of Chicago to develop because of the way that the river works, right? The Chicago River comes in above the loop. It goes up on the North Branch, and the North Branch and the Chicago River at that time had a lot of river traffic coming in. So you needed the invention of drawbridges and clearance and all this stuff in order to actually be able to have people living on the north side where they could travel over easily, commute, that sort of thing. So when that happens, it's this weird mix of some of the worst slums in all of Chicago that have already existed there. And then all the wealthy people fleeing the south side, what was called Millionaire's Row, to this unspoiled lakefront property.
Right. And they can get stuff easily with the drawbridge and
absolutely. And that is where what we call the Gold Coast still is today.
Okay.
Right? So it may be the last to form, but it's simply the most lucrative bootlegging territory in all of Chicago during Prohibition. And it's controlled by the thugs who came out of these shanty towns along the river in places called Little Hell and Kilgubbin, which are slums for well into the 20th century. The Cabrini Green housing project, which was infamous, is in that area. They take over that territory, and that is the North Side Mob. This originates out of that Market Street gang I talked about, a multi-ethnic gang. One historian I read called it a United Nations of crime.
That's amazing.
I love that.
Incredible band name.
Yeah. Or album name.
Yeah.
Or it could be like an album and then it's the same name as the band. It's
Yes.
our first album, right?
Perfect.
Market Street Gang, there isn't a Market Street in Chicago, so I was confused by that. Market Street was changed to Orleans for those in Chicago, so that gives you some knowledge. And there's a big shift that happens when its leader, Samuel, quote, Nails Morton, World War I veteran.
Why is he
He's a tough dude.
tough as nails?
He's tough as nails. He liked World War I so much he kept going back.
That says it all.
That sort of says it all. He's out. His hobby is riding his horse around Lincoln Park. And one day he does that. The stirrup breaks. He falls from the horse and the horse steps on his head and kills him.
That's how that guy goes?
That's how that guy goes. His gang, allegedly, and I pray to God this is true, take the horse out of the stables and shoot it. As one does.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a whole thing with horses. We've talked about this.
I mean, Godfather.
Yeah.
Sopranos.
Love killing a horse.
Nails Morton. So, with Nails Morton killed by a horse, a man is going to rise to the top of the North Side Mob whose name is mud to Al Capone. He's going to hate this guy. And
more than the others.
More than the others. And that is Dean O'Banion, who we're going to talk about next. So, let's fast forward a little now to 1923.
Okay. About 10 years?
No,
3 years.
Well, 10 years from the newspaper wars era, right? And 3 years since John Torrio and Mike Merillo hammered out an agreement between a lot of the big mobs in Chicago. Let's not fight each other. Let's divide up territory.
This is the Kumbaya moment.
This is the Kumbaya, the John Lennon dream, all that. Make money together.
It only takes 3 years for it to go to shit.
Well, you're ahead of me because you're grasping, something may not sit well with these gangsters, right? And what starts to shake things up is a reform mayor, William Dever, gets elected. And he is vowing to crack down on bootleggers and crime in Chicago. So Capone is planning a move to Cicero, Illinois, one of the big western suburbs, right? Where he's going to control the town in forthcoming elections and have it be the base of operations till they can get their mayor back in, move back to Chicago.
So he's going to lay low a little.
He's going to lay a little low, exactly, and lick his wounds, right? So in order to do that, though, he has to move over, take over Cicero, Illinois, and this upsets the delicate balance. It's a delicate balance. If you watch a nature documentary, life is so, there's clownfish. Yeah, a clownfish and a sea anemone, It's
anemone.
This is literally a Finding Nemo bit. Okay, let's not do it too much. But an anemone, the anemone of my enemy.
Yeah, totally. Let's go.
It's my friend, right? And so When he moves to Cicero, the new leader of the North Side mob makes a beef about this. He says, you're going to make money hand over fist in this new suburb that we never said you could have in our division.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, yeah. When we had our little moment.
We divided things up here. Now you're taking a whole new territory, right? That's not fair to us.
You can't just do that.
John Torrio, ever the peacemaker, says, okay, you're going to have a slice of Cicero too, right? You get this block of Cicero. That, and that makes us
Is he satisfied with that?
What this new leader of the North Side mob does is he takes that and he invites every scumbag in Chicago from every gang in the city to say, set up shop on this street. It'll really annoy Torrio and Capone.
Oh my
right?
God.
You'll be making money on their territory and they can't do anything about it because I control it, right?
Incredible.
You pay me. This is very annoying to John Torrio when he in good faith has tried to do this. So then they try to placate this guy again. They say, we'll give you a slice of our brothel proceeds, right? Our prostitution rackets. And it needs to be said that the man we're talking about is Dean O'Banion.
Okay.
Former altar boy, killer of 24 people. And
Those two things often go together on our podcast.
It's so weird. And he is absolutely incensed that he's being offered brothel proceeds. Because
that's just too far for him.
This is no self-respecting Catholic should be involved. I mean, I can kill people, obviously.
Yeah, murder's fine.
But the sex trade is where I draw the line. And this is a common thing that's attributed to Capone and Torrio, that they expanded brothels around the city. That there's a racial element to it too. The Italians do it. There's a lot of self-righteous talk about this from a guy who's
that's really interesting.
Psychopath, right? And Dean O'Banion at some point says, to hell with these damn Sicilians.
It's the same thing we see later with drugs, where the Italians are like, I won't touch that.
Too risky.
And we see other gangs that are sort of taking that over. But it really is not about what it's about.
No, it never is. And with Dean O'Banion, when he's complaining about this, he should have gone to therapy. It ain't about the brothels, Dean. It's about you being a psychopath. And that necessitates us talking about...
I'm always saying that.
I'm always saying... That's the name of my self-help book. And this brings us to Dean O'Banion, who we have to talk about. His North Side mob. This is Dean in the middle here.
Okay.
Dean O'Banion grew up in Kilgubbin, in Little Hell, these shanty towns, these horrible shanty towns on what is now called Goose Island in Chicago. Riverfront hell. Real poverty, grew up with a lame leg.
Polio?
I don't remember what it was actually, but he, had a limp throughout history. And he starts out, like I said, as a newspaper slugger, right? He's a singing waiter at a tavern, which good Irish tenor.
Didn't see that coming.
Right? He is a wannabe cowboy who, with his bootlegging wealth, buys a ranch in Colorado. He wears these fine tailored suits. He always carries 3 guns on him at any one time. And then my favorite characteristic of him, he's a very skilled and passionate florist.
I love that.
Wonderful.
Because I did not see that coming.
Later, there's going to be a newspaper headline, Police in Vain Hunt O'Banion, Man of Flowers.
That's the memoir title.
Yeah. And this is it. This is Schofield's Flower Shop. I think 738 North State Street, across from the cathedral. It is. I was just there about a month ago. At the
just paying your respects.
I was. There's nothing there now, but the Holy Name Cathedral's still there. And so Dean O'Banion ran his operation out of there after Samuel Nails Morton was, as the newspaper says, killed by horse, which you just do not want to have under your picture in a newspaper.
No, you definitely.
I would say, personally. But O'Banion is, like I said, not every gang boss is a psychopath. I think this one was.
I also feel like the fact that he's a florist adds to the
It's
psychopath.
so weird.
Because it's like, oh yeah, you would have this like really lovely hobby as cover for just being an evil, demented man.
Though I must say, it's not just a hobby. He makes a lot of money legitimately as a florist because he caters to all the gang funerals.
Oh.
So at a time...
So that's just smart. I'm just saying.
At a time when there's like over 100 gang murders a year in Chicago, He's making significant amounts of money doing the floral arrangements. And that's not even a fucking joke.
Incredible.
Right? So we're going to talk more about that. The North Side Mob, like I mentioned, being this criminal fraternity, this United Nations of crime, it's multi-ethnic. And again, even Capone's gang at the start of Prohibition is only 60% Italian. So there's a significant mix, right? And we have amongst the leading lights, again, you don't need to know all these names, but they're just fun. George Bugs Moran, who has an insanely violent temper. That's him in the upper right.
Very scary looking guy.
Scary guy.
Cleft chin.
Cleft chin, yeah.
And then, when people have really light eyes in a way that makes them look possessed.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say there's someone in the news right now that may or may not have these eyes.
J.D. Vance.
I wish.
Yeah.
Erica Kirk. But like the really light blue eyes with like the very small black pupil.
Yeah.
And you're just sort of like...
Yeah, you are something from Ghostbusters staring at me right now.
There's nothing behind there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, George Moran is kind of like that. Now, despite his name, he's not an Irish-American gangster. He's French-American from St. Paul. Changed his name. But his first name used to be Adeline. That's not a good name. Or is it Adelard? I forget which.
Well, beautiful name, in my opinion, but...
Not a good name for a gangster, though.
No,
you got to be named Bugs Moran.
Yeah, that has packs a little more of a punch.
That's right. So we have him. We have Earl Weiss, Earl Wojcicki, Jaime Weiss, despite his name, not Jewish, commonly mistaken as being such. Ugly, leering, defiant.
Very, very scary man.
Yeah, is the headline over him. He's the main hitman for the North Side Mob. Polish-American gangster, even more religious than O'Banion. Prays the rosary constantly. A very, very scary man, sometimes called the only man Al Capone is afraid of. Here we have Vincent Drucci.
Looks very similar.
But Italian, right?
Okay.
And I would say handsome. I bring it up to say he starred in a early stag film, aka blue film, aka porno.
Okay, I was like, what?
Right. Called something like Mike's Hot Time, something like that. It's like some insane. So his main activity was breaking into payphones and stealing the change. This is
victimless crime.
I mean, like,
is that even worth the money?
I cannot see how it would be, There you have one of the Gusenberg brothers, I forget which. These are male robbers who become hitmen, hired muscle for them. And here in the lower left-hand corner, we have an arms cache, shotguns, Tommy guns, all these weapons found in a North Side Mob hangout. So these are significantly warped, violent criminals who nevertheless are working fairly effectively in Chicago during Prohibition.
I wouldn't want to go up against this ragtag team, let me tell you.
It really is like a gang that couldn't shoot straight, but they do shoot straight, and they are pretty intimidating and actually effective. Yeah. Right? Part of the reason for that is when Prohibition springs into effect, they very quickly buy up all the breweries and distilleries on the north side of Chicago and acquire them. So they are putting out arguably superior alcohol to that of the Capone mob. They're also hijacking a lot of liquor. Alcohol isn't just made in Chicago, obviously. A lot of it gets trucked in from Ohio, places like this distilleries run by George Remus, from Canada through Detroit.
So they're not stealing from each other?
Oh, they are.
Okay.
This is a major issue that they're sticking up each other's truckloads and taking it for themselves, right? And the O'Bannon provocation in Cicero, right? And the insults over the brothel proceeds, right? It's part of a pattern of him pushing on this deal, right? He doesn't really respect these guys. He thinks he can overtake them, and he wants to not be too subservient to them. He wants to push back, right? And so Torrio has to deal with this, right? To put yourself in the shoes of John Torrio. You have the superior mind, you have the superior business, but you can't take these guys unseriously. These guys could take you out, right?
Seems like a classic American story.
I mean, this is right. This is the way they got to think, right?
Yeah.
Like, today could be the day that you wake up and it's all over,
Mm-hmm.
So John Torrio, the first thing I notice him doing is he lets that gang of brothers, the terrible Jennas, start pushing back too. The Jennas are not exactly a part of the Capone gang. They're their own thing in Little Italy. But Torrio starts to not help when O'Banion complains about them and, taking some of their territory, right?
Okay.
That's one way of dealing with it, right? But the problem is Mike Merlo, who I mentioned earlier, the underworld diplomat, the Unione Siciliana, right? The guy who he does business with everyone. He wants.
Where's he at during all this?
He's trying to keep the peace. He wants to keep a balance between everyone.
It's like we can't get too hot,
If we do that, it's bad for all of us. Violence is bad for everyone here, right?
He has a point.
Right? We have a new mayor in, Dever, who's promised to crack down on the gangsters. They can't afford to draw more attention to this, right? And in 1924, there's a real fear because there's going to be another election, right? And even though there's a reform mayor, there's a chance to grab as many lower positions as they can, right? So there's a proxy war happening between Capone and O'Banion. And here's the thing, O'Banion's winning. O'Banion holds a fundraiser for a slate of judges, of police.
Oh, he's getting them on his side. That's a good idea.
It's amazing. He has a fucking fundraiser. The Gusenbergs are on the stage with them, these hitmen, Incredible. It's crazy. And they're going to do well in that election, right? Not only that, O'Banion, very sneaky. He's doing more sneaky things. He's a very sneaky guy, Sneaky. Here's a bizarre story that happens, for instance. He has an associate named John Duffy. John Duffy is a hired thug out of Philadelphia. And as you'll do sometimes when you drink too much, you might, kill your wife.
Okay.
That's what John Duffy did. He killed Maybelle one night. A cabbie would later testify that he brought someone matching Dean O'Banion's description to the Duffy household that night because Duffy surely called him for help, right, upon realizing what he'd done. O'Banion sees an opportunity here. He tells Duffy, okay, we'll get you out of town, take care of you. Go meet me at this place, the Four Deuces on the south side. We'll pick you up there.
That's a Capone place.
That's right. Duffy goes to the Capone place, is seen there by witnesses, is seen leaving, getting in a car. Duffy winds up dead, found in the woods.
Gotta say, O'Banion's kind of smart.
He's cagey.
He's firing on all cylinders.
He's cagey this one. Suspicion falls upon the proprietor of the Four Deuces, Al Capone. Oh. And Al Capone has to say, quote, I am a respectable businessman. I do not own nor have any connection with the Four Deuces. I own a furniture store adjoining the place.
Oh, yeah.
And for no reason at all, somebody is always trying to drag me into something, right? So while he's contending with that, right, this is an annoying thing. Al Capone's having to fight back a murder investigation, right? There's another sneaky trap occurring on John Torrio, the big boss, right? O'Banion, amidst all this strife, says to him, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm done with this crime and punishment stuff.
I just want to arrange bouquets.
I want to arrange bouquets on my ranch, man. I just want to cowboy up, go over to Colorado, range chrysanthemums and begonias, and ride around my ranch.
That's kind of my dream.
I mean, that's the pitch, right?
Okay.
And he says, I need some walking around money for that.
Yeah, pay me to do that.
So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll sell you my best brewery, Siebens Brewery, on the north side. You have an insane capacity for beer after you buy this. I've heard quotations of as much as $750,000 for the cost of this brewery. It's a big facility, right? So May 1924, they arrange for the sale. And
this brewery, hold on, is just allowed to operate during Prohibition?
Because they've corrupted all the police, everyone, right? And Dever is trying his best to crack down on it, but he's fighting with one hand tied behind his back, right? So at the Siebens Brewery, John Torrio goes to finalize the deal. As soon as he arrives, the police raid the place. And the owner is now John Torrio.
Stop. God, this guy's good.
Now, Dean O'Banion is arrested as well in that raid, but He almost certainly arranged it.
Yeah, of course. Because when you said, he wants to sell, I was like, yeah, right.
So
he could move to Colorado, have someone keep running it.
It was a fucking trick. And now John Torrio, nicknamed the Fox, he's a clever guy, and he still got him here, right?
Right.
And John Torrio, because this is not his first offense, he's going to face prison time for this.
Uh-oh.
It's
worn out.
A serious problem at this point, right? And what that means is the last line of defense for an all-out gang war in Chicago at this point is Mike Merlo, who is trying desperately to keep the peace among all sides. But he has cancer.
Oh, God.
So if that wasn't bad enough, he is going to succumb to cancer in November 1924, and that is the month everything finally kicks off. You know, it's so important to vote this time of year, November. I mean, it's not now, but I mean like in November.
Where are you going with this, bud?
Listen, vote blue no matter who was a thing even back then for guys like Dean O'Banion, right?
Okay.
Vote Dean or I will kill you was more the motto, right?
Yeah.
And with a reform mayor in Chicago, Dean O'Banion, the head of the North Side mob, has it in his sights to corrupt and corrode all of Chicago while Al Capone is worrying, having to move to Cicero with John Torrio, right? He feels pretty powerful right now because when the election happens in November 1924, his slate of corrupted candidates do very well.
Right. And remember, he held that little fundraiser.
That fundraising. Yeah, absolutely. So he's feeling pretty good about himself right now, right? Mike Merlo has just died. Mike Merlo, the peacekeeper, the head of the Unione Siciliana, has died. That's one of the last restraints on Dean O'Banion going and taking the rest of the city, right? Mike Merlo has died. Another good thing about Mike Merlo dying, huge uptick in funeral orders of flowers. Seriously. The wax figure we saw earlier of Mike Merlo.
How does this guy have time to do flowers also?
It's like us, man. We got multiple jobs.
That's true. God, so relatable.
It is relatable.
Kill someone, go make a bouquet.
I'm on that grind set. Okay? I mean, and he has like from two guys alone on the south side of Chicago with Italian names, one of them Jenna, interestingly. He has an order of like $10,000 plus for flowers for this wax effigy of Mike Merlo that's going to be at the funeral.
Wow. I love that he profits off that guy's death from many angles.
Yes, he does. And so this election's occurred. He's profiting off that, off the flowers, off the power, off all this. And he's brought back a little present to Chicago from Colorado.
So what did he do on vacation?
He spent a lot of quality time with the missus. The real boss of the North Side mob, huh?
All right.
You know what I mean, fellas? He also encountered a very interesting weapon being marketed to ranchers out west to deal with coyotes and other animals on the range. It's a weapon that was designed originally for World War I for use clearing the trenches. It's called the Thompson submachine gun. The Tommy gun. That's right. AKA the Chicago typewriter.
Yeah. And this becomes sort of emblematic of mobsters of that era.
And it has not been used in Chicago yet. Now, Chicago, it should be said, does not actually have an aberrant crime rate from the rest of the country during this time.
Oh.
Always unfairly pinned on Chicago in that sense. But it must be said, they are the first city to import 3 Tommy guns, which Dean O'Banion brings back with him from Colorado. They are going to be of use in the coming years.
And, I mean, this is obvious, but they're much more effective in killing people.
They are fucking crazy. They go, okay? I mean, you empty 20, 50 bullets at a time, 70 in some of these drum clips, Yeah, it's going to be absolutely nuts the same way, assault rifles are today, right? So Dean O'Banion brings these back because he knows war is coming and it's time to wipe out the Capone Torrio mob, right? But the Torrio Capone mob has the same idea for him and the North Side mob. And this brings us to their plan, right? Because we've talked a lot about Dean O'Banion being all sneaky and all this stuff and very clever and trapping. But you know what? He's not as clever as John Torrio.
There's no way they're just going to let him keep doing this.
He's playing all these fucking games. All the games, incidentally, you'll remember, have kept John Torrio and Al Capone alive. And that's kind of a mistake.
That is a mistake.
If you're going to go after them, you got to go for the jugular and just take them out because these guys are alive and standing still, right? And even if they've been forced to retreat to Cicero, even if, we're going to talk about it next week, Al Capone's brother has been killed there, right? They're enduring serious damage, right? Even if Mike Merlo is dead, right? That cuts both ways. With Mike Merlo dead, O'Banion's last protection in the Italian community is gone too, right? Torrio's facing prison time. They know O'Banion set him up.
What does he have to lose?
That's it, right? And O'Banion, to make matters worse, is already acting like he's the boss. He's bossing around the Jenna brothers. He's calling in debts, abusing them on the phone. And here's what I think happened. I think Capone and Torrio got together and said, let's let the Jennas take the lead on this. We'll help. We'll sit back.
They can take the blame too.
And that's the other thing. And then they'll take the blame also from the North Side mob. They'll sop up all the casualties and we win, right? And this requires the arrangement of Dean O'Banion's death. I mentioned earlier those two Italian Southsiders who placed the order for flowers for Mike Merlo's funeral and the statue. They are not actually using their real names. These are Albert and Salmi and John Scalise, two of the main gunmen for the Jenna brothers. They're going to be joined by a third gentleman. Make some noise! You're starting center from New York, Frankie Yale.
Oh,
Frankie Yale.
They bring him over.
The fucking Grim Reaper, the guy Al Capone calls when they need to kill someone big. His old friend from Brooklyn, Frankie Yale. Frankie, we need you to hop on a train again.
When Frankie hops on a train, you're not long
You're
for this
fucking
world.
dead, okay? It's like fucking Dracula's coming to visit you, right? Frankie Yale hops on a train again, the same way he did to go to Chicago to kill Jim Colosimo. And
this is kind of his thing now.
This is his thing. This is so me, he probably said at one point, you know? And Salmi and Scalise and Frankie Yale go to the flower shop to pick up the chrysanthemums. Dean O'Banion steps away from arranging the flowers.
I just say, I love that he's like, this guy thinks he is so good with his floral business that he then uses, that he's like profiting off deaths in two ways. We're going to fuck him vis-a-vis that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and you have to put the flowers down to greet these guys, you know? Could it be any more cinematic?
No, it's so cinematic.
Right? So he does that, steps away. The sole other employee in the place, William Crutchfield, who is a black custodian / porter, and thankfully is not hurt in what happens next, tells later what happens, which is Dean comes from around the counter, and if we could see now, he comes from around the counter to greet the gentleman, shake hands with them, says, how you boys doing? You here for the, Merlo thing? And Frankie Yale, the angel of death, shaking his hand, doesn't let go.
Oh, that's never good.
He realizes something is wrong as all of them produce pistols from their pockets and put a bunch of holes in Deanie.
Boom.
Leave him collapsing to the floor. And let's say, even though I don't have proof for this, they drop some chrysanthemums on him too. I don't know that that's true, but you know what?
It's beautiful. Let's run with it.
Newspaper. If I was a newspaper guy back then, I would have fucking made that up and put it in there, you know?
Question, why didn't O'Banion think that he needed to kill Capone or Torrio?
I think it's arrogance, contempt for them, right? Thinking I'm better than them. They're on the back foot. I'm more powerful. But at the end of the day, it's just a huge mistake. And I think at the end of the day, it speaks to the fact that these guys are not at their caliber, you know?
Right.
This guy's a thug who was beating up newspaper vendors, right? And John Torrio and Al Capone, what they're building is kind of...
He was playing the long game.
It's a level above that, right? We have this unbelievable illustration. I mean, the Chicago Tribune had this thing back then of doing illustrations of events that occurred. I love it so much. We said it could be an album cover. It should be. But the problem is the plan, even though the execution goes off exactly as desired, even though the O'Banion funeral is one for the ages, right?
I can imagine. I'm sure Torrio and Capone even go.
They do go.
Of course, got to pay your respects.
We had nothing to do with this. It was those Jennas who did it, if anything. And they are unnerved when they go to the funeral that Jaime Weiss, the chief enforcer for the North Side Mob, glares at them the whole time.
He knows what's up.
He knows. Okay, so he definitely knows. He's behind me, isn't he? Yeah, he knows. He's not fooled. And even though in short order they kill 3 of the Jenna brothers, right? They're not letting them off the hook, right? North Side Mob goes to work very quickly, right? Kill a bunch of the Jenna brothers.
Jesus, there's 6 of them? There's a lot of them.
There's 6 of them. Yes. I think 4 of them get killed. 2 of them run off. So they're eliminated.
Okay.
Right? What happens in January 1925, a couple months later, is the first signal to Al Capone that he may be in trouble. Al Capone's car, actually Frank Capone's car, or Ralph Capone's car, his brother, outside the Four Deuces on the south side of Chicago. Car rolls by, fires some bullets into it. Lightly wounds the driver. Al Capone was there. Charlie Fischetti, his cousin, was there. But no one else is harmed. It's a bit of a warning, it seems like.
Uh-oh.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
If they'd really intended to kill him, they probably could have. They didn't want to, it seems like. They wanted...
Just watch your back.
Watch your back, right?
Which is almost scarier because now you just know you're about to be killed at all
times. It's so much creepier, right?
Like, just kill me,
Like we could do this anytime we want, is what they're saying.
Yes.
Right? And 12 days later, something much more serious happened. By the way, and this is Al Capone as a young man, right? And it's also putting him on the spot, putting him in the spotlight, right?
Mm-hmm.
But 12 days later, the serious shit happens. January 1925. John Torrio is returning from shopping with the missus.
As one does.
As one does. He's a house husband, to be sure. No, he doesn't cat around, They're always staying at home, listening to the radio. So they're returning from their weekly shopping trip. They are unloading the car with their chauffeur. Car rolls up. It's Bugs Moran and one of the Gusenberg brothers, 2 guys that you do not want showing up at your doorstep.
Oh, yeah. We talked about Buzz with those scary blue eyes.
Yep.
Bugs. Sorry.
Bugs, yeah. And they start unloading. Torrio is hit multiple times, 4 times, falls to the ground. Moran or Gusenberg, we think it was them, walk up to him, put the gun to his head. For the finishing shot, the coup de grace, they're out of bullets.
No.
So he looks like they got him. He's badly wounded in the neck.
I mean, that's almost worse because he's now just suffering.
So they leave him. Cops are coming. They get out of there, right? John Torrio.
What about the wife? Just watching the whole thing?
Oh, she was putting the sodas away inside. She wasn't.
She's a witness.
Yeah, good luck getting her to talk, though, right?
True.
Shut up, honey. Shut up. Yeah, John Torrio, to that point, says to police he knows who shot him, but he's not going to identify them.
Okay.
So he recognized them, right? And he says that rasping because he's been shot in the throat. For the rest of his life, he's badly scarred.
So he lives.
He survives. They
That's
leave him for
amazing.
dead. He's still alive, just barely. Came that close to getting killed. If they'd had another gun in there, he'd be dead, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he just survived. The rest of his life, he will grow a beard, stubble, wear scarves and stuff like that to hide the scars of that as he recovers. But at some point in his long convalescence, and much of that is spent in Italy, where he's secreted millions of dollars, right? Later, it's spent going back to New York in semi-retirement, but not really. We'll talk about that later.
He's growing more powerful as he rests.
He is an elder statesman of the mob, but he can't do it in Chicago. This is too hot for him.
Mm-hmm.
And that means he tells Al Capone, this is yours now.
Yep, it's your time, baby.
The first movies that are going to be made about Al Capone, they all have "the world is yours," right? In advertisements. Scarface, Underworld. The world is yours. The world is now Al Capone's. You have the outfit to do with it as you see fit. You're the boss now. And as a young man, still in his 20s,
wow,
Al Capone is gifted the outfit. And what he does with that is going to be the subject of the rest of our series.
Hell yeah.